Hello everyone, Jace here. So Konami's announced a new box and it comes out tomorrow. And I have to, so I don't have time to like really give like a really good in-depth review of the box, but I will be going over some cards, like just like off script, no script, just going over the cards in the box. So it's gonna be Shooting Quasar Dragons, the cover card, and it's Pulse of the Quasars is the name of the box. So let's just go over the first card. Is Yugioh, Cephalon, the Ultimate Time Lord. Cannot be normal summoned or set, must be special summoned by having 10 or more monsters in your graveyard, and cannot be special summoned by other ways. Once per turn, you can special summon one level 8 or higher fairy type monster from your hand or graveyard, but its effects are negated, also its attack becomes 4,000. So Cephalon is okay, I guess. Like, you can maybe play it in Lightsworns, I don't know. It doesn't seem super great though, just because 10 monsters, even for like a Lightsworn dex, which is made to mill monsters, is pretty a big ask. But yeah, it's okay. It's like not one of the worst UR cards we've gotten. Next up is Shooting Quasar Dragon. It requires 1 tuner synchro monster and 2 or more non-tuner synchro monsters, and it must be synchro summoned and cannot be special summoned by other ways. This card's maximum attack number of attacks per battle phase equals the number of non-tuner monsters used as synchro material, and once per turn during either player's turn, when the card or effect is activated, negate the activation if you do destroy it, and when this card leaves the field, you can special summon one shooting star dragon from your extra deck. So Quasar is really good if you can get it out, which I'm not sure. They might give a skill to like turbo this out, but otherwise this is pretty hard to get out in like junk synchron decks, just because the levels don't line up. You could make this in TGs though, so that is a boost for that deck, but you do have to be running the nerfed skill now to actually make Shooting Quasar. But still, that's better than nothing, I guess. Next up is Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend. It requires 1 tuner or 1 or more non-tuner monsters, and it's a level 8 Dark Dragon Synchro. And this card's name becomes Red Dragon Archfiend while on the field or in the graveyard. Once per turn, you can destroy as many special summon effect monsters on the field as possible with its attack less than or equal to this card's attack other than this card, then inflict 250 damage for your opponent for each monster destroyed. So Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend is really good. It counts as Red Dragon Archfiend, so that means it's useful for making the Red Nova Dragon. But that's not as big of a deal because it is generic. So any deck that can make level 8 synchros will probably run this just because like a Dark Hole on a monster is really good. Especially since it doesn't have any other restrictions. Like I think there's another red... Hot Red Dragon Archfiend is the name. The other one, it does basically a similar thing, but it also can't attack. But like Scarlet Red Dragon can attack, so yeah, really good card. Next up is Wavering Eyes. Destroy as many cards in each player's pendulum zones as possible, then apply these effects in sequence depending on the number of cards destroyed by this effect. 1 or more, inflict 250 damage to your opponent. 2 or more, you can add 1 pendulum monster from your main deck to your hand. 3 or more, you can banish 1 card in the field, and 4, you can add Wavering Eyes from your deck to your hand. So this card, so Wavering Eyes would be strong if there weren't like the link restrictions for pendulums. Otherwise, as it is right now, it's a -1 to search any pendulum, which might not be a bad thing, but like you kind of need to have like a good deck for it. And right now there aren't any decks that really benefit from destroying their own scales. I mean, I guess there's Abyss Actors, but they don't really need Wavering Eyes. They're pretty consistent already on their own. So yeah, I don't think this is going to be a great card. Next up is Tyrant Red Dragon Archfiend. Requires 2 tuners and 1 or more non-tuner monster. Must be synchro summoned and cannot be special summoned by other ways. And you can only use each of these effects of Tyrant Red Dragon Archfiend once per turn. During your main phase, you can destroy all of the cards on the field. Also, for the rest of its turn, other monsters you control cannot attack. And during either player's battle phase, when a spell or trap card is activated, you can negate the activation. And if you do, destroy that card. And if you do that, this card gains 500 attack. So this Tyrant Red Dragon Archfiend is extremely strong. Probably better than Red Nova in a lot of cases. Just because it destroys all other cards on the field, which just completely clears the entire field for like an OTK. Its other effect probably won't come into play after activating the first effect, unless your opponent just has spells or traps that just don't get destroyed. But yeah, extremely strong card. Also, it's actually generic, unlike Red Nova, so you could play this in like TGs, I guess. TGs can make more double tuning monsters. So yeah, this is generic too, so extremely strong card. Next up is Time Maiden. If you control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand, and this card can be treated as 2 tributes for a tribute summon of a Time Lord monster. You can tribute this card, add 1 Time Lord monster with 0 attack from your deck to your hand, and you can banish this card from the graveyard, special summon 1 Time Lord with 0 attack from your deck, ignoring its summoning conditions. You cannot special summon other monsters during your turn you activate this card. So Time Maiden is an extremely important part of the Time Lord archetype. You have to run 3 of these. So it being an SR in a mini box does kind of hurt, because that means you do have to dig three boxes for this, but it is extremely strong for Time Lords. And I feel like Time Lords probably are okay. I mean, you can't really do the Time Lord OTK in this format, but still fairly strong. Actually, no, you can, because even with half the effect damage, the one that halves life points doesn't actually change its effect. So actually, Time Lords is really strong with Time Maiden. Maybe it'll be a good deck, I'm not sure. Especially, but like the cards that you use for a Time Lord FTK are currently in the event that's running right now. So yeah, you're gonna have to dig 3 of them for the Time Maiden, but it might be a pretty strong deck. Next up is Shooting Riser Dragon. It requires 1 tuner and 1 tuner non-tuner monster, and if this card is synchro summoned, you can send 1 monster from your deck to a graveyard whose level is lower than this card's on the field, and if you do, reduce this card's level by that monster, but for the rest of this turn you cannot activate the effects of monster with the same name as the sent card, the same name the sent monster had in the graveyard. You can only use this effect of Shooting Riser once per turn, and once per chain during your opponent's main phase. Quick effect, you can immediately after this effect of resolve synchro summon using this card you control. So Shooting Riser is okay. It is a level 7, so it's pretty easy to access. And it does dump anything, so you can dump like a Bacon Saber, I guess. So yeah, it's pretty good, I guess. I don't know. I just don't I can't really think of a deck that would actually run this. Like, TGs could run this, but like, they don't need to, is the problem. So yeah, I don't think junk decks don't really act as 7s either. So yeah, I can't really think of any decks that could run this. But like, it's a good card if you find a way to use it. It being a tuner synchro does mean you can access a lot of good, like tuner synchro monsters, the Excel synchros. But like, I guess I can't really think of any deck that can actually abuse this. But like, it's a good card by itself, I guess. Next up is Red Rain. If you control a level 8 or higher synchro monster, banish all monsters on the field except the monster with the highest level. Also, the remaining face-up monsters on the field are unaffected by other card effects except their own until the end of this turn. If a Dark Dragon synchro monster is synchro summoned to your field while this card is in your graveyard, you can add this card to your hand. So it's recurable, which is nice, but the problem is that it's a trap card. So, I mean, I guess you could like make this as Disruption turn 1. But like, your deck has to already be functioning in order for this to work. So it's kind of win more, but like, I guess if you can pull it off, it's fine. Next up is the main archetype that's being introduced in the box is the Soulful Chords. So first up is Cutia, and its pendulum effect is the pendulum summoned to Soulful Chord pendulum monsters cannot be negated, which isn't super relevant, I guess. I guess there's Steel Swarm Roach, but there's not really many decks that can negate special summons. But its main effect is the monster effect is, while you have an even pendulum scale in your pendulum zone, Soulful Chord pendulum monsters you control gain attack equal to 100 times their own pendulum scale, which is not the important effect. If this card is normal or special summon, you can add 1 Soulful Chord pendulum monster from your deck to your hand. So it's just a Stratos basically, but like, that's pretty important for the archetype. Next up is Foss Soulful Chord Fancia. If you have an odd pendulum scale in your pendulum zone, if your Sulfur Cord Pendulum monster would be destroyed by battle, you can destroy this card instead. During your main phase, you can add one Sulfur Cord Pendulum monster from your deck to your extra deck face up, except Sulfur Cord Fancia, and you can only use this effect of Sulfur Cord Fancia once per turn. So this card is okay. It does add Sulfur Cords to your extra deck, so you can Pendulum summon them later, and it also has decent attack. So you're probably gonna be running like maybe 2 of them because it's searchable with yugioh, but yugioh is definitely a 3 of. Next up is Coolio, which is the main boss monster. Your opponent cannot activate a spell, or trap, or monster effect when your Sulfur Cord Pendulum monster is Pendulum summoned. So this is way more important than Qtia's effect, because this like stops Bottomless Trap Hole, Floodgate Trap Holes. But its other main effect is also pretty important. You can special summon this card by attributing 2 Pendulum monsters. You can only use the following effects of those Sulfur Cords Coolio once per turn. You can target 1 face-up card your opponent controls, or up to 2 if you have an odd pendulum scale in your pendulum zone. Negate its effects until the end of your opponent's turn. When the effect of a monster on the field is activated with an equal or lower attack than the highest pendulum scale in your pendulum zone, you can destroy that monster. So the first effect is okay. The biggest problem with it is that it's not a quick effect. So it just kind of, like, it doesn't really do too much. But the second effect is also pretty good. With Qtia in the scale, which is an 8, you can basically destroy anything your opponent activates. But yeah, overall it's okay. Next up is Synchro Overtake. Reveal 1 Synchro monster in your extra deck, choose 1 of the Synchro materials mentioned on it, add it to your hand, or special summon that monster from your deck or graveyard. Also, you cannot special summon a monster from the extra deck to turn you activate this card except Synchro monsters. So this was really important for the Junk deck. This is just another 3 copies of Junk Synchro, basically. So you just activate this, reveal Junk Warrior, and search Junk Synchro and go into your combo plays with this. So yeah, pretty good card. I'm not sure if there's any other decks that can take advantage of this. Maybe Genix? I think Genix can use this, but like they're not good. So yeah, the best deck you can probably run this in is the Junk deck. Next up is Yazi, which is a selection box card, so we already know what it does. It's really good, and it sees play in Black Rose and other decks. Next up is actually really interesting. Falling Down. Activate this card by targeting an opponent's monster and equip this card to it. Take control of it. Destroy this card unless you control an Archfiend card, and during your opponent's standby phases, you take 400 damage. So this is Snatch Steal, which is like, Snatch Steal is insane, and it's still banned in the TCG and LCG. But it's only for Archfiends, which does make it harder to use. But like I guess the best deck that you could use this in is Infernities. Infernities do sometimes end on their Archfiend, but if you can find like an Archfiend that's just generic, you can use this pretty easily. I guess there's Archfiend Eccentric also, which is like you could use this in like a Pendulum deck with Archfiend Eccentric. But yeah, insanely strong card for just a rare, though it is harder to use. Next up is Pendulum Mucho. It's a 0 scale, which is interesting. And once per turn during your main phase, this card was activated this turn, you can target 1 of your Pendulum monsters that is banished or in your graveyard, except Pendulum Mucho, added to your extra deck face up. And if this card is normal or special summoned, you can special summon 1 level 1 Pendulum monster from your extra deck, but banish it when it leaves the field. So I guess this is just kind of interesting because it's a 0 scale, so you can Pendulum summon level 1s. But other than that, it's not super good, because it doesn't really do anything. Like, yeah, you can special summon a level 1 Pendulum monster from your extra deck, but that's like not super strong. I guess it's also recycling, but like, I think most Pendulum decks have better ways of doing that too. Next up is Lazion the Time Lord. Cannot be special summoned from the deck. If you control no monsters, you can normal summon this card without tributing. Cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. You can take no battle damages from attacks involving this card. Standard Time Lord effects. At the end of the main phase, if this card battles, shuffle all cards from your opponent's graveyard into a deck, and then once per turn if your opponent draws a card, inflict 500 damage to your opponent. So the main effects are the shuffling of your opponent's graveyard and 500 damage, which are both pretty good. 500 damage is less so because it's just not a lot of damage. But shuffling all your opponent's like graveyard setup could be really strong against certain decks. So I think it's like worth maybe running one of because it's searchable off the time needed. Next up is Gabrion the Time Lord. Can't be special from the deck if you control no monsters. I'm just gonna skip that. Yeah, skipping all the the Time Lord stuff. At the end of the battle phase of discard battle, shuffle as many cards your opponent controls as possible into the deck. Then they draw cards equal to the number shuffled into their deck. So this card is okay removal, but it does give your opponent some resources back, which kind of sucks. But like completely clearing their field could be really strong. And it also if it only draws per the cards shuffled into the main deck. So if you bounce like extra deck monsters, they don't get any draws, which is pretty strong. Next up is Infinite Machine. Activate this card by sending one empty machine from your spell or trap zone to the graveyard. Once returned, this face-up card cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects, and once returned you can activate one of these effects. During the main phase, special summon one Time Lord from your hand, and you can target one Time Lord in your graveyard, shuffle into the deck, then you can set one Infinite Light directly from your hand or deck. So this one's like, it's just worse. Hall of Valhalla, whatever, I don't remember the name of it. But like the continuous spell that special summons fairies from your hand is just better than this card. You need to already have an empty hand on the field and activated in order to activate this card. So yeah, this card's not very good, but like you kind of need it as a stepping stone for Infinite Light. So Infinite Light is activatable by sending Infinite Machine to the graveyard, and this face-up card cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. Neither players can target Time Lord monsters you control with card effects, or return Time Lord monsters on the field to the deck. Once returned, if you control no monsters, you can special summon up to one Time Lord from your hand, deck, and graveyard with different names, ignoring their summoning conditions. So Infinite Light is extremely strong. But you kind of have to jump through a bunch of hoops to get to it. And if you're surviving long enough that you can get Infinite Light out, you probably already won at this point. So it's kind of just a win more card. Next up are more Sulphur Chords. Ray Sulphur Chord, Dreamia. Pendulum summons cannot be negated, and while you have an odd pendulum scale in your pendulum zone, if a Sulphur Chord pendulum monster card you control would be destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you can destroy this card instead of one of those cards. If you control a Sulphur Chord monster in your pendulum zone, you can special summon this card from your hand. This one's okay. Like, it's a free special summon before your pendulum summon, so you could potentially get into like a Link monster, just so you can get like more Link arrows to pendulum summon more. But with the limited amount of zones, a lot of the Link monsters kind of point to nowhere, which is really annoying. Especially the archetypal Link monster, which is in the box. I think they put it in the card trader, but the archetypal Link monster is really strong for the deck, but it has a bottom left and a bottom right arrow, which is really bad. But yeah, next up is Gracia. Your opponent cannot activate spell or trap card or monster effects while your Sulphur Chord pendulum monster is pendulum summoned, and while you have an even pendulum scale in your pendulum zone, if your Sulphur Chord pendulum monster attacks, your opponent cannot activate monster effects until the end of the damage step. If this card's normal special summon, add a spell or trap from your deck to your hand. Sulphur Chord 1. So this is pretty important. It is a level 5 though, so you do need to like actually pendulum summon it, but it gets you all of your spell and trap lineup, and spell and traps of the Sulphur Chords are really strong. Next up is Angelia. If you have an odd pendulum scale in your pendulum zone, if your Sulphur Chord monster attacks, your opponent can't activate spell, trap cards, or effects until the end of the damage step. And during your main phase, you contribute one Sulphur Chord pendulum monster, even if face down, and if you do, special summon one Sulphur Chord pendulum monster from your deck. This pendulum scale is 2 higher or lower than that monster. So this is like sort of it's a level 6, so it's a little annoying to get out, but it's sort of like a Lone Fire Blossom for the archetype. It's not super great, but you probably still run it because it's a low scale. I mean, Gracia was a 4 scale, which is really bad. But Angelia's 3 scale is okay. But one weird thing about this card is that it says even if face down for tributing, which is kind of weird because if you tribute for something you can always like you tribute a face down and it'll still count. Like you don't need to. It doesn't need to be public knowledge for the tribute to be correct. But whatever. Next up is Soulful Chord Elegance. Activate one of these effects. Place one Soulful Chord Pendulum monster from your deck to in your Pendulum Zone. Add one Soulful Chord Pendulum monster from your hand to your extra deck face up, and place two Soulful Chord Pendulum monsters, one odd, one even from your deck in your Pendulum Zones, and draw. Or add two cards, one odd and one even Pendulum Scale from your Pendulum Zones to the extra deck face up. If you do, draw 3 cards. So you're probably going to use the middle effect most often, but that middle effect is really strong because it completely sets up your scales and puts a monster into your extra deck to be Pendulum Summoned. It's basically the Shanka and Shangxing skill that Odd Eyes has, but on a card, which does make it harder to use because it's not like easily searchable, because you already have to be able to Pendulum Summon to basically get Gracia out. But like it's still basically your biggest play starter. Next up is Harmonia, and it's a field spell where you can activate one of these effects. Add one face-up Pendulum Soulful Chord Pendulum monster from your extra deck to your hand. Increase the Pendulum scale of one Soulful Chord card in your Pendulum Zone by its level this turn. And if you control a Soulful Chord Pendulum monster with at least 3 different even scales or at least 3 different odd Pendulum scales, destroy one card your opponent controls. So you basically want to use the last effect, but that last effect is really hard to set up. But like if you do set it up, it's just a free pop per turn. Otherwise, this card is just kind of okay. It's at least searchable, so you don't have to run too many of it. Next up is Soulful Chord Musica. Activate one of these effects based on the pendulum scales of Soulful Chord Pendulum monsters you control. Odd. Special summon one face-up Soulful Chord Pendulum monster with an odd pendulum scale from your extra deck. Even. Special summon one face-up Soulful Chord Pendulum monster with an even pendulum scale from your extra deck. Even and odd. Target one card your opponent controls, destroy it. So if you get Elegance out, plus Musica, if you get Elegance out with Gracia, you can use Gracia to search Musica and you basically have a free disruption. So that's pretty nice. But that's like a 3-card combo, which is pretty bad. Actually, it's a 2-card combo, but like plus a specific monster. So it's still like this deck is very good, very inconsistent, but when it works, it's gonna be pretty decent. Next up is Tri-Mid Loading, which is insane. If a field spell is placed face up in the field zone, add one Tri-Mid spell trap from your deck except Tri-Mid Loading. If a face up rock monster you control is destroyed by a battle or card effect, special summon one Tri-Mid monster with a different name for your deck. So Tri-Mid Loading is extremely good for Tri-Mids. It basically just does everything for your archetype. It adds a spell trap for your deck to your hand, which includes the field spells, but it also includes Pulse, which is really important. And it also just makes all your Tri-Mids float, which is really strong. So yeah, insane card for Tri-Mids. You're definitely want to run 3 of these, but it does disrupt with balance, the skill. But like you still other Tri-Mids decks have been using other like field spell skills, so I guess that's not a huge problem. Next up, Drill Warrior. Drill Synchron plus 1 or more non-tuner monsters. Once a turn during your main phase, you can have this card's attack, and if you do, it can attack your opponent directly. And once per turn, discard 1 card, and if you do, banish this card. During your next standby phase, special summon this card banished by this effect, then add 1 monster from your deck to your hand. From your graveyard to your hand. Drill Warrior did used to see play in the TCG in like 2011 as like a control deck, because you would hit directly for 1200, banish itself to avoid any removal, and it'll come back and you get to recur to discard. So if you can get it to work out, like with a bunch of traps set, it might be an okay deck, but it's probably not going to be anything too notable. Next up is Synchron Explorer. When this card is normal summoned, you can target 1 Synchron monster in your graveyard, special summon at a target, but its effects are negated. So it's kind of like a reverse Junk Synchron. Like you basically maybe run 1 of these to like recur back a Junk Synchron, but otherwise this is pretty okay, I guess. Actually, aren't these reprints? I think these might be reprints. Yeah, Force Resonator and Synchron. Yeah, Drill Warrior is also already in the game, so disregard what I said, because it's not seen play. Next up is Dark Snake Syndrome. I think that's a new card. During your main standby phase, inflict damage to both players. This card damage begins at 100 and is doubled during each of your following turns. So this card is really bad. It starts at 100. It becomes 200. It becomes 400. In order to actually kill your opponent with this, I think it takes like 7 turns? Yeah, I think it takes 7 turns, which is not very quick. Or it might take 6 turns. I don't want to do the math, but like it takes a while before this actually kicks in, and it's not very fast with it. Next up is Brainjacker. Flip, equip this card to a monster on your opponent's side of the field and treat it as an equip card. Take control of the equipped monster. Your opponent gains 500 life points during each of their standby phases. This is like a really old card. I don't understand why we didn't have this earlier, because it's really not that good. I don't understand how you're supposed to use this. Next up is Cloak and Dagger, which is actually an interesting card. It says declare one monster card name. If your opponent's normal summons, special summons, or flips that monster face up, remove that monster and discard from play. So, it's a very interesting card. Like, if you know exactly where your opponent's playing, you can call the a monster that their deck completely revolves around it, and they basically just can't summon it. But otherwise, it's kind of hard to control, and like there are a lot of decks that just do not care. Like, you cannot call one specific card to stop. But definitely an interesting card, especially since it's the first card where we can declare names. And this is the second card, Engraved the Mark. If your opponent activates a card that by declaring exactly one card name, send this card from your hand to the graveyard, declare one other card name, and the card name your opponent declares becomes the card name declared by this effect. And then once with your quick effect, you can target one face-up card in the field, destroy it during the end phase of the next turn. So the interesting part is definitely the first effect, which pretty much only stops Cloak and Dagger, I think. I don't think we have any other like specific declaring card name cards quite yet. Second effect is pretty bad though. It's a delayed like destruction effect, which is just completely awful. Next up, Froggy Force Field. Activate only when a face-up frog monster you control, except Frog the Jam, is selected as an attack target. Frog the Jam doesn't even exist anymore, so it's kind of funny that it's still on the card. But it's basically Mirror Force for frogs. And as we know right now, regular Mirror Force is just not super great. I do see people play it, but like it's not super hard to play around, especially with everyone running like Phoenix, Nightmare Phoenix. So yeah, Froggy Force Field is just bad. Like archetype specific bad Mirror Force. Next up is Scrum Force. While you can control 2 or more face-up defense position monsters, your opponent cannot target defense position monsters you control with card effects, and they can't be destroyed by your opponent's card effect. If this card would be destroyed by a card effect, you can destroy one card in your spell and trap zone instead. Like I guess maybe you could somehow make a lock with this, but otherwise it's not that great. As long as your opponent can just make Nightmare Phoenix to destroy it, you're gonna need a lot of like spell traps and other zones just to protect it. Maybe someone will make a stall deck with this work. Next up is Sadion, the Time Lord. It has all the Time Lord effects, and at the end of the battle phase, if your opponent battled and your opponent's less than 4,000 life points, your life points become 4,000. So Sadion is actually insane, especially in Duel Links, just because if your opponent just leaves you with any amount of life points, you basically can just completely recover them back every single turn as long as you can get Sadion out. But yeah, probably good in like a stall deck, and you might run one of them in a Time Lord deck. Next up is The Accumulator. Gains attack equal to a combined link rating of all link monsters on the field times 300. This is just not good. I don't really understand. Like, you need to be able to link summon a bunch of link monsters, and their link ratings have to add up to at least 6 to be decent attack. I think that if you have 6, that's 18. Yeah, no, that is really bad actually. You need 7, 8. 8 gives you 24. That's pretty. Yeah, I can't even. The math just does not work out for the Accumulator. Next up is Wakinetic Puppeteer. Quick effect: send this card from your hand or field to the graveyard. Target one monster your opponent controls, move that target to another of their main monster zones. It just shifts around like one of their opponent's monsters. I guess maybe this could help against Mech Knights. If they like make a link monster, you can move the link monster to a main monster zone. That's still not super great because that's only like one specific deck that this actually affects. Yeah, so pretty bad. Next up is Halon the Time Lord. Has all the Time Lord effects, and at the end of battle phase, if your discard battle, if your life points are lower than your opponent's, inflicted damage to your opponent equal to half the difference. So this card's pretty bad. It doesn't even like bring your opponent's life points equal to yours, just because of the dumb Duel Links burn nerf. So yeah, probably not running this in Time Lords. Next up is Empty Machine, which is the part of the machine like series of cards that are helping Time Lords. And the first time this card would be destroyed by an opponent's card effects is not destroyed. Once a turn, you can activate one of these effects. Discard one level 10 monster, draw one card. And this card is the only card in your spell and trap zone. Target one Time Lord monster in your graveyard, shuffle it into a deck, then you can set one infinite machine directly from your hand or deck. So the first effect is honestly okay. It helps you cycle through your Time Lords pretty quicker, and it does help you like turbo out infinite machine. But other than that, it's like maybe a one-off. I don't know. It's not searchable, which is the biggest issue with it. And you don't want to run 3 because it'll clog up your hand. Next up is Mi Sofa Chord Alitia. While you have an even pendulum scale in your pendulum zone, you can take no battle damage from battles involving your Sofa Chord pendulum monsters. And if this card is no more, special summon target one spell trap card your opponent controls return to the hand. So this is pretty bad, just because like you could literally make Nightmare Phoenix and to actually destroy the card and instead of just bouncing it. But maybe you'll run one of this because it's searchable off of Cutia. Next up is Butia. Quick effect, target one effect monster your opponent controls, or if you have an even pendulum scale in your pendulum zone, target one face-up spell or trap card your opponent controls. This turn, banish it when it leaves the field. You can only use this effect once per turn, and once per turn at the start of the damage step, if this card battles an opponent's monster. It battles a monster with equal or higher attack than the lowest pendulum scale in your pendulum zone times 300. Destroy that monster. So the lowest you can get is with yugioh, which is 100, which is 300. So it's at least decent for that, for like being a caster like effect. But the first effect is pretty bad, just because like it doesn't actually banish the card. It just makes it so that if you can remove the monster from the field, it gets banished. And I don't think any of the other cards are just notable. Let's see, what's Hourglass of Courage face up? Nope. None of the rest of these cards are notable. So yeah, that's it for this box. So overall, it just kind of there's a decent amount of archetype support, but there's nothing really super generic. You can get Sofa Chords. I don't think are going to be very good just because they're not super consistent. Time Lords do get a huge boost with Time Maiden at least. Other than that, I can't really think of anything. Wavering Eyes is definitely a trap for Pendulum decks. Do not dig for Wavering Eyes. It is not a good card with how Pendulum summons work. I guess you could at least dig this box once for Shooting Quasar Dragon if you're running TGs with the other skill. That's not the one that actually adds cards to your hand. But yeah, comment down below what you think of this box and if you're excited for it. Like, what's your favorite card from this box? And like and subscribe if you want to see more Duel Links content. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.